Interview with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrskyi. Indeed, it is very important, perhaps for some, with such unexpected, startling statements, and it definitely needs to be discussed. Where Russia is preparing a new offensive, the size of the enemy grouping, the role of drones in the war, and the brilliant operations of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in deep strikes, attacks deep into Russian territory. This is important. Welcome, friends, to my channel. I am Alexander Musyenko. And now let's discuss. Firstly, I must share my personal impression. I had some experience, perhaps not very significant, but still an opportunity and an honor. I had the honor of speaking with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrskyi. I must say that he is truly a person who is, well, he is deep. He thinks through his words. He considers what to say, how to explain, and tries to explain certain important things quite thoroughly. This is a characteristic, and it is a good one for a combat general, considering his experience, considering his skills, the knowledge he is now using to the fullest in the interest of serving Ukraine. There is no doubt about that. And now to the interview itself. So, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine began with, Russia is building up its armed forces. And as of January 1st, 2025, the army had 603,000 military personnel. And by April 2025, their number increased to 600,000. 23s, this is taking losses into account. So we can say that considering the losses, meanwhile, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine notes that the annual, monthly increase in Russian forces is 8,000 to 9,000 people, which is equivalent to 120,000, 130,000 dan per year. In addition, Russia has a prepared mobilization resource of 5 million with service experience and a total potential of 20 million. This is regarding Russia's capabilities. These data indicate significant efforts by Russia to sustain a prolonged war, increasing the size of the army. It is a response to the losses Russia has suffered and preparation for new offensives. The large mobilization potential allows Russia to compensate for losses, creating prolonged pressure on Ukraine. Furthermore, the Commander-in-Chief noted that Russia has already launched a new offensive in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions, where the number of enemy offensive actions has nearly doubled in a week. These regions are strategically important, as controlling them could provide Russia with a foothold for further advancement into Ukrainian territory. Therefore, Ukraine is already countering. Moreover, as the Commander-in-Chief noted, which is very pleasing, he mentioned firstly that the Kursk operation, which was launched on August 6, 2024, was the first significant operation by Ukraine on Russian territory since World War II. It involved the engagement of 5 brigades, achieved an advance of 12 kilometers in a day, and breached the fortified border, disrupting Russia's offensive plans in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Let's compare this with what is happening now. When the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, noted that we are now seeing the presence of Ukrainian troops both in the Kursk region and in the Belgorod region, where actions are underway precisely to prevent the deployment of Russian troops into offensive combat formations with the aim of repeating large-scale offensive actions deep into Ukrainian territory. In fact, this is observed today, and we see it, meaning Ukrainian forces are acting to contain. Moreover, as emphasized by the Commander-in-Chief, he mentions that Russia will conduct the Zapad 2025 exercises. I want to remind you that the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, first spoke this year about the threats, challenges, and risks associated with these exercises during his speech at the Munich Security Conference, where he noted that Russia would be redeploying divisions. And these are threats not only to Ukraine, but also to European countries. So, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, General Syrskyi, noted that the joint exercises of Russia and Belarus, planned for 2025, might conceal the formation of offensive military groups, similar to what happened before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The preparation for these exercises began in January 2025, with the conduct of staff training in Minsk. The exercises involve over 13,000 troops and raise concerns due to their scale and proximity to the borders with Ukraine. Historically, such exercises have been used to disguise military preparations, which, well, we actually understand. And this adds weight to General Sirsky's words. Additionally, on the positive side, Ukraine has created the world's first drone forces, and it has achieved an operational depth of up to 1,700 kilometers and is developing optical fiber drones with a range of up to 20 kilometers. This is also very important. This figure will be continuously increased. This will allow for compensating the shortage of traditional artillery and aviation. In addition, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine noted that a series of operations have been successfully conducted. These are deep strike operations, strikes deep into Russian territory, and recently, for example, a Russian strategic aviation bomber Tu-22M3 was destroyed just after landing. This indicates the growth of our capabilities, which will continue to increase. As the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine notes, we need to increasingly rely on our own strength. We highly value the support of our partners. However, as General Sirsky notes, we are observing a decrease in assistance from the United States. And Americans. The main assistance is currently coming from European partners. This is confirmed by the political stance of the United States that we are currently observing. And self-sufficiency in drones can be achieved within a year thanks to PACE intensive efforts. This is an important step towards reducing dependency on external assistance, especially, in the context of unstable international support and considering the challenges that exist as of today. Similarly, the Commander-in-Chief confirmed the statements of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, that Ukraine needs to mobilize approximately 30,000 people each month. But we are facing the problem of updating data. It needs digitalization. The same applies to the fact that now a large number and thousands of people are returning from so-called unauthorized leave of units. Rotation is ongoing, but demobilization by April 2025 is deemed unrealistic due to the needs of the front. I think this is obvious and needs no explanation. Training during those courses without AVP has been increased by 1.5 months. The change in command is due to inefficiency and high losses, as well as the fight against fictitious reporting. That is, to prevent reports being sent upwards claiming that everything is fine. It must be said that a distinctive feature of the Commander-in-Chief is that he controls the processes and very often visits the front. And he knows not from words or reports, but actually familiarizes himself with the situation on the ground. That is, everything possible is being done. We see that the Commander-in-Chief is deeply involved in the war. And despite everything, the defense forces of Ukraine are fulfilling their tasks. And the Commander-in-Chief noted that victory, of course, should be with Ukrainian flags on internationally recognized borders of the year 1991, and the army is doing everything possible to destroy the enemy. But how will these borders be restored by military means, exclusively, or including the political? This is another question. Whether it will be done politically with the help of partners, that's another matter. It seems to me a very realistic assessment. It's especially good when it comes from the military, because this opinion from the military should be considered by the political leadership, and that's why the president says that we are ready to liberate part of the territory through diplomatic political methods, as there is no military solution at the moment. At the same time, Ukraine is doing everything to defend itself, particularly with our partners. And how is the idea of deploying a military contingent of our partners viewed by General Sirsky? Positively, because it serves as an additional element of security guarantee. A very, I think, balanced and rational interview that explains many aspects of what is happening, realistic. But it is about the fact that even under any difficult conditions, the defense forces, the armed forces are ready to fulfill the tasks and commands assigned to them. They are working on this despite everything. This is the most important thing to understand. They see the challenges and threats, assess and respond to them within the capabilities available today. Take care of yourselves and glory to Ukraine.